This is Steve Meehan for the Kent Pilot. Steve Arnold is the executive director of the Garfield Center for the Arts in Chestertown. He comes to this Garfield with over 30 years of association with performing arts and 15 years in theater management. He has over 75 production roles to his credit, including 3 full-length plays and multiple short performances. Steve arrived at the Garfield the first week of January 2020 and has been in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic that has seen a huge influence on all our lives. Steve Arnold, welcome to the Kent Pilot.
Steve, thanks for having me.
COVID-19 has transformed all of our lives, but one of the greatest losses is the ability to enjoy live performances, be it stage productions or music. The Garfield was at the hub of performance art in the region. You are one of the 2 community theaters and a great music venue. As I walk by the Garfield today, it is eerily quiet, yet I see lights on and people are at work. Tell us how the Garfield has responded to the COVID-19 safety challenge.
Well, that's a short sentence or question that's going to have a really big answer, so I'll try to sort of keep it simple. Mostly, in a nutshell, we moved online. There was an interesting conversation that just happened to occur the same day that the governor sort of shut the state down back in March. We had this conversation in the office that morning, understanding where things were going and realizing that we were probably going to have to change. We just didn't realize how timely that conversation was going to end up being. But we started to sort of pitch ideas about what we could do or what we could become during this time period. Mostly, really the entirety of the conversation was really all about what can we do for the community? How can we, as an arts organization, how can we, through our programming, keep people connected to one another in what we anticipated would be a very dark time, very sort of separated time, the kind of period of time where no one is going to be able to kind of go about their lives the same way. So we moved online for the purpose of kind of keep providing programming and presentations so that people could utilize that as a unifying way to enjoy what the community has to offer and bring us together in that sense.
What steps did you have to take to move from a live performance venue to a multimedia organization?
Quite a bit. Really, I think none of us felt that we had the skills per se, but also there was a recognition that we'd be forgiven for not necessarily knowing how to put programs together in a way that maybe looked flashy or very professional. And that learning curve has eventually sort of come around to getting us there. As we entered into that process, I was the only person that was associated to us that I knew of or anyone knew of that had any video editing. So suddenly my job, experience in that, suddenly my job went from theater administrator to theater administrator and video editor whenever we had something to put up. So we did this online weekly presentation called GCTV. Every Wednesday night at 7:30, we went live on Facebook. Eventually, Facebook changed their criteria for what you're allowed to present. So we moved that platform over to YouTube, and we kept that up all year long. And then as we made a little time for ourselves and we understood that learning curve was assisting us toward that inevitability, we moved to some online ticketed events that allowed us to revisit our short attention span theater and do that as a digital presentation. And then we just finished up the year with the holiday program that was all video edited, performed. All of these involved brand new works that so we didn't have to deal with the royalty situation and that sort of thing. So yeah, it's been quite a change over because none of us really had any experience in this.
And when you talk about ticketed events, talk about fundraising and supporting your operations in this new age.
Sure. So the state and federal programs have made quite a bit of emergency funding available. Some of it has been very sort of centered toward arts and arts venues. specifically because they knew, I think the funding agencies knew what kind of hit that the arts programs and the arts organizations were going to take in all this. If you can't have people in the door, you're not raising your own money. So, but there's still a need for the arts, you know. So in that regard, funding became something that we had to go after quite a bit, and we have been successful in seeking out and finding funds to keep that sort of bottom line dollar high enough that we have a continued source of income in that regard. Now, ticketed events are something that obviously ticketing and having people sort of enjoy your programs and being able to raise revenue from that was a whole different matter. Because while we set out to do GCTV as a free program, the ability to present the kind of thing that we felt confident in selling tickets for was something we had to grow into. But we eventually did, and now we're doing quite really not too bad, all things considered. Yeah.
And do you have an upcoming ticketed event you're promoting?
We are actually sort of in a transition at this point. We're talking about streaming live productions from our stage. Now, the concern that we have is, can we do it safely with the people in the space? Obviously, we're not going to have audiences there, which is why we're going to stream. So that keeps the audience safe. What we're looking at is exclusively royalty-driven shows that are 2 or 3 actors only, and a prerogative or a set of very sort of detailed instructions for our directors and our actors about how the staging for those plays must occur, so that social distancing in the actors can occur while still presenting a comprehensive play for the audience to enjoy. We would like to get back into the regular business of what we do, and I think that that's one way that we can do it while everybody's still safe. And the advantage to it is that we then set a season, so that if things change for us, such as a vaccine really having an impact on our audience's comfortability of being in our space, then we can maybe look at opening the doors again, and then maybe having a hybrid approach where we still stream for the people who are not comfortable. We have the audience open for those who are. So that's where we're at this point.
What is the Live Playwrights Society, and what role does the Garfield Center play with it?
So Live Playwright Society started as a group that was founded by myself and Mark Sullivan, who is the current board president for the Garfield Center, and the executive director at the time, who was Lucia Foster, when I was here in Maryland the last time when I was down running Churchill Theater. We had dreamed up this idea of a group that could help to nurture the voice of local Eastern Shore playwrights. Through a process of allowing them to submit materials for us to do readings and give them constructive feedback. So it's sort of like a readers group for writers. And what has eventually come out of that is that many of the years recently in which we produced yearly our short attention span theater has been a premier grounds for plays that have been written under the sort of the banner of Live Playwright Society, people who have been a part of that process. So we've seen, and in fact, this past year, these 2 digital programs that we ticketed were made up entirely of local playwrights' works, and all of them were participants in Live Playwright Society. So yeah, it's designed for people to learn how to write for the stage and to have that support process available to them to learn how to do it better.
The Garfield Summer Camp Program has been a robust part of summer arts education in Kent County. What are the plans for 2021, or when will you be able to reconstitute that program?
So we had to cancel 2020 eventually because obviously of COVID. We can't really have an environment where people are sort of closed in and around each other together without a concern about it becoming a super spreader event or something along that line. We tried to move it into a digital program, but there was not much of an interest, not enough for us to sustain the program and essentially pay the educators that we normally have involved in it. So right now, 2021 is once again in limbo until there's some sort of change in the health situation for us to have the confidence that we can put these folks together and let them get back to what we do. I'm a huge, huge supporter of any education program involved in the theater. I think that it allows people to be immersed in the arts in ways that sometimes the schools fail them. But until we get a better disposition on the pandemic, then we're on hold.
And what is your closing message to our viewers?
Well, I think we've been pretty well supported in the time that we have had to close down under the pandemic. But ultimately, I think that art support has been a concern throughout this whole period. We are not the only ones who suffer. Even if it's not us, there are plenty of arts organizations here in town. There are plenty of arts organizations across the country who are suffering from the difficulties that have come through this lack of revenue with the pandemic. So my closing message, I think, to the community is to continue to support the arts. The greatest tragedy of the pandemic would be that when we come back to real life, it still doesn't resemble what we hope it should look like or what we're familiar with, because in the meantime, these great institutions have gone away and are no longer available to them. So I would ask that the public continue to support the arts and remember that you want them to be there when you come back so that you can continue to enjoy what they've had to offer you in your life in the past.
Steve Arnold, thank you for joining us. For the Kent Pilot, I'm Steve Meehan.